Hi all. Today what we're talking about is pronouns. And pronouns are a very convenient part of speech that basically it takes nouns and makes them shorter. So you don't have to say Walmart Supercenter, Toyota Tacoma, Professor David Jameson every single time you refer to that person or thing in a sentence. You can instead say it, or he, or something simple and smaller like that. Instead of having all of these big unwieldy words, you can cut them down and replace them with a cute, short little pronoun that takes its place for the rest of that sentence or paragraph or whatever. And yeah, so it makes, they always make language a lot more wieldy. Okay. Most of the time when we refer to pronouns, we're referring to personal pronouns. And for these, you pretty much just have to conjugate them to whatever situation you're in, whatever type of person or thing you were talking about. First person, I or me, that's a way of me talking about myself or you talking about yourself. If you're going to use first person plural, we or us is generally the way you would do it. Second person, so this is me referring to you, the student, so you is the singular way of doing that. For plural, you could use you, kind of works. All of you is a little better. You can use y'all in regular speech, but I don't recommend doing that in a paper because the grammar police will become very mad at you. Third person. So third person, again, speaking about someone else that isn't there. She or her for female types. Him or her for male types. It, if you're talking about an object. They or them is generally how you'd want to refer to a person who doesn't want to use gendered pronouns or who doesn't have a specific pronoun, like a hypothetical person. And then their, them is generally how you'd want to refer to any of these for plurality. Okay. Then there are other types of pronouns as well. And we'll go through a few of them really quickly before we get into some common mistakes. So we already did personal pronouns. That's just how you're going to refer to specific objects or people. But next there's demonstrative pronouns. So demonstrative means like demonstrate, which is like to show off or something like that. If you can imagine pointing to something, then that's generally the time you're using a demonstrative pronoun. This pen, these books, that water heater. Any of those are examples of demonstrative pronouns. Interrogative pronouns. So these are words, these are pronouns you would use to ask a question about something. Who hit my car? Which of the cats peed on the floor? Any of those could be examples of interrogative pronouns, and you would usually use those in a question, where you're trying to figure out a specific person or object or whatever from a group, and you don't know which one it is. And relative pronouns next. So I'll just read this because it's a little complicated. Used to join or relate two different clauses together by referring to the noun in the previous clause using the pronoun. So that's a little bit wonky, but it's not so hard. I'll give some examples. So, my husband, who can eat 20 eggs, is in the hospital with a stomach condition. My cat, which likes to pee on the floor, is in the box tonight. So those would be examples of relative pronouns. I'm showing a clause first that explains what the noun is, and then I'm using a pronoun to replace it. You might have noticed that who and whom, and probably some of these other ones are being used in both of these. They can fit in both. There's no specific pronouns that go in specific types here. Indefinite pronouns, used to show unspecified objects or people, whether in plural or singular. So, this would be like, if I'm being hypothetical about people or whatever, someone who drives a Tesla needs to have a Powerwall as well. Anybody who takes Professor Jameson's English class better do the homework or they'll fail. So those are examples of indefinite pronouns. Reflexive and intensive pronouns. So these are kind of ones that we've already been doing here. Used to indicate a noun which has been used in an earlier part of the same sentence. Yeah, so let's see. Alexander Graham Bell considered himself to be a genius. The Roman public considered themselves to be the masters of the world. So those could be examples of reflexive or intensive pronouns. So they're just, all that means is that you've already used the noun and now you're using a pronoun. Reciprocal pronouns. So these are used when two or more nouns are doing or being the same to one another. My coworkers hate each other. That's why they always undermine one another. Those would be reciprocal pronouns, where they're just going back and forth. Okay, so let's do some common pronoun mistakes. So I covered this a little already, but assuming the gender for general ideas, if you're coming up with a generalized version of a person, and you give it a gender, that's considered to be a bad thing to do. And usually, if you think about it, you're falling into some kind of stereotype. So here's some incorrect ones. A professor should always write his papers in proper format. Not all professors are men. More and more of them are women now, so it's really important that you don't assume the gender of this person just because of stereotypes from the past. And of course, this person doesn't have any actual characteristics. They are a completely hypothetical person. Just like this one here, a secretary should have a high typing speed so she can keep up with her boss. Not all secretaries are women, and we shouldn't assume that they are. So instead we're replacing those with those they and their pronouns that we had before. A professor should always write their papers in proper format. A secretary should have a high typing speed so they can keep up with their boss. Okay. Next one, I versus me. This is one that most people screw up a lot of times. And usually the way to fix it is just to remove all of the different parts of your sentence that don't have anything to do with the basic things that are going on. If you have an extra person there, then just take them out. And that's what I do in these examples here. So, my boss and me went to the company picnic. So, it's hard to tell here whether you want to use my boss and me or my boss and I, but the way to figure it out is just take out all of this part here, all the parts about my boss, and just say, me went to the company picnic. Now, does that sound right? No. No one's ever going to think that sounds right. So instead, you're just going to replace me with I. I went to the company picnic. Next example here. If you ask Bill or I about local restaurants, Wing House has the best wings in town. So here we're just going to take Bill out. Bill messes up everything, just like he's messing up this sentence. So instead we say, if you ask I about local restaurants, Wing House has the best wings in town. That doesn't sound right, of course, so instead we would replace I with me. And the total sentence would be, if you ask Bill or me about local restaurants, Wing House has the best wings in town. Okay, next one here. Pronouns should match the noun that they replace. And so, in this case, this is whether you're replacing an object or a person, you need to make sure that you're matching that. This is one that I actually screw up quite a lot. I know a man that can eat 20 boiled eggs. So, in this case, we're talking about a man. A man is a person. You don't want to say that as a replacement for a man. So, instead we're going to say, I know a man who can eat 20 boiled eggs. Last one here. Unclear antecedent. So, if you have a sentence with a whole lot of nouns flying around in it, and then you start using pronouns at the end of it, a lot of times you will confuse your readers as to which noun you're referring to with the pronoun. So, for example, my boss gave the angry customer his credit card. So did my boss give the angry customer his own credit card? Or did my boss give the angry customer the customer's credit card? It's hard to tell just by reading that. Now we can infer he probably gave the customer his credit card. But it's better to write it in a way where it's absolutely clear. So the better way to do it, my boss gave the angry customer's credit card back to her. Oh, I changed the gender of that customer. She had a really interesting time at the store, I guess. Alright, guys. So, that's my lesson on pronouns. After this, I would probably have students write some demonstrations of their own and then share them all with the class if I wanted to cover pronouns that much. Thank you for your time, and hopefully I will see you in an interview later.